everyone, my name is Sarah and welcome back to Everyday Consent. A while back, I told you a little bit about my experiences at Reed Maholko's Sex Geek Summer Camp.
I'm actually at Sex Geek Summer Camp, Reed Maholko's Sex Geek Summer Camp, which is a sexual educators business kind of retreat camp thing.
I don't have a lot of practice filming for myself, so we didn't get a lot of usable footage. Sorry, Jessie. So you really only got the basics of what it was like.
And we've had lots of classes about different business techniques relevant to sexual educators and all kinds of relevant stuff about intersectionality, and we've been doing lots of stuff about consent, which is awesome.
But while I was there, I had some experiences that I thought were very relevant to this channel and that I've been itching to tell you all about. So today, I'm excited to share one of those with you and tell you about something called a cuddle party. First, why cuddle parties exist, and then some useful insights and exercises I learned by attending one at camp. Now, before this summer, I had never attended a cuddle party or known any details about the official organization.
And in like 2 hours, there'll be the Cuddle Party, which is this thing that I'm learning about.
I had heard of them before and was familiar with the vague concept. For those of you that don't know, a cuddle party is a hosted, facilitated event where people who might be strangers can come practice giving and receiving non-sexual physical affection. Why might that be appealing, you ask? If a cuddle party sounds weird to you, you're not alone. But there's a fair bit of research which suggests that massage and other forms of human touch can have many health benefits. It appears to reduce blood levels of cortisol and increase levels of oxytocin, which can result in reduced stress and elevated mood. These effects have also been linked with improved immune response and overall health. So generally speaking, touch seems to be good for us. And it usually feels good. So long as you're comfortable in the situation, many forms of touch, such as getting a massage, hugging a friend, or holding hands with a sweetie, can be comforting, relaxing, and just plain enjoyable. But at least in the United States, it's very uncommon for people to touch each other in non-sexual contexts. Though they are not inherently sexual acts, things like cuddling and holding hands are activities that American culture generally assumes adults only do with each other if they are in a sexual relationship. And when people do try to be huggy or cuddly with platonic friends or new acquaintances, it's often assumed that they're flirting, and misunderstandings abound. So finding and navigating touch outside of sexual relationships can be difficult and confusing, but we also know that it's good for us, and many of us want more. What to do? So enters the Cuddle Party. Cuddle Party is a nonprofit educational organization which trains facilitators to put on events where adults can explore communication, boundaries, affection, and non-sexual touch. And I got to attend one of these parties while I was at camp.
So I just came from the Cuddle Party. It was actually pretty great.
It isn't all about the cuddling, though. As the organization promotes, and as my experience confirmed, cuddle parties really are a space for attendees to learn about boundaries and work on communication skills. After all, it would be foolish to assume that any room full of people can just jump into cuddling with complete strangers without feeling awkward. Without any coaching, a lot of people might feel pressured into doing something that they don't want to out of assumed politeness. So the first 40 minutes of each party, called the Welcome Circle, are an introduction of the 11 rules and a collection of exercises to practice different aspects of verbal consent. This might seem like a lot, but this workshop-style introduction was actually quite helpful, and I was really impressed with how considerate and thoroughly thought out it was. I'll link to a full facilitator script in the description below. I'd also like to share some highlights and some of my favorite parts, as I think they are great additions and new insights on some exercises and concepts we've already explored on this channel. Once everyone had arrived, the first exercise we did was similar to one I described in the Practicing Consent video. We were paired up. One partner had to ask, "May I kiss you?" and the other partner had to say no. Then the partners switched roles and repeated the exercise. We did this a couple of times and were encouraged to try different ways of asking, such as, "I would like to kiss you. Would you let me?" To every question, we all practiced responding with no. Once we finished this exercise, the facilitator asked, "How many of you assumed when we said kissing that we meant kissing on the lips?" A lot of people did, but some people thought it meant a kiss on the cheek or the forehead, or something even more innocuous like the hand. This led to a brief discussion about assumptions and how it's important to be specific in your requests, since someone might feel very differently about a kiss on the lips versus a kiss on the forehead or the hand, especially if they're expecting one but get the other. Next, the facilitator asked us, how many people felt the urge to explain themselves or make a joke out of saying no? I was floored by this question and immediately raised my hand. I had just been thinking during the exercise how odd it was that even though it was just an exercise and my partner expected me to say no, I still had this overwhelming urge to use humor to soften the blow. And I wasn't the only one. Almost half the room raised their hands. The facilitator went on to explain that this might be due to a fear of disappointing others, and for me that really rang true. In my rejection video a few months ago, I talked about how needing to reject someone might lead to feelings of hesitation and fear about potentially causing them pain. And that's definitely what I was feeling in this situation too. It was enlightening to realize that I could still feel that fear even in a practice scenario where my partner expected me to say no. You would think there would be no pressure in that case, but somehow even then, I was worried enough about my partner feeling insulted that it was hard to give just a plain no. To help with this issue, the facilitator went on to assert that no can be a complete sentence, and that it's important to keep reminding ourselves and others of this. Later on, the facilitator reached rules number 5 and 6. If you're a maybe, say no, and you are encouraged to change your mind. We then went on to do an exercise where we practiced changing our minds. One partner makes a request, say asking for a hug, and the other partner says yes, and then says, actually no, or maybe, that was great, I'm done now. This exercise was great because I've often found it's difficult to tell someone when you've changed your mind. It can feel like you're being dishonest with them, or you can worry that they'll get annoyed with you, when in reality, your feelings have simply changed, and you're just trying to give them the most updated information. One of my other favorite exercises was a variation on the first exercise, but with a few twists. We got into pairs again, with one partner asking and the other partner responding. But this time, we had to come up with a bunch of different requests. We were encouraged to ask for things regardless of whether they were things we actually wanted to do or even made sense. This meant that, at least in my group, we came up with a variety of questions that ranged from sounding serious to completely absurd. We'd ask anything from, do you mind giving me a foot rub? To, may I spank your left butt cheek? To, may I stroke your beard? To, can I tickle your kneecap? Can I please tickle your kneecap? It's like my thing. For the first round, the other partner has to say no to every request. And for the next round, the partner has to say yes to every request, but not actually act on it. Having to ask for things that we didn't actually want, and letting it be a bit absurd and funny, gave us the safety to ask for things that we do actually want, but might be too shy or embarrassed to ask for. Funnily enough, I didn't actually do any cuddling at this party, but that in and of itself was also great practice for me. The facilitator made clear that it was perfectly fine to participate even if we said no to every offer, and that we should only say yes if we really wanted to. That meant that since I was feeling a little overloaded that day and needed more personal space than usual, I got to practice taking care of myself and saying no without feeling excluded or like I wasn't being a team player. I was surprised how difficult that was for me, and I found that practice very valuable. Anyway, that was my cuddle party experience. I think it reinforced and expanded on some concepts that we've addressed on this channel before. And if you're looking for different ways to practice consent, I think the exercises that I mentioned are great additions to those that we mentioned in the Practicing Consent video. If you have any interest in attending or hosting a cuddle party yourself, check out their website, which I'll link to in the description. Otherwise, let me know down in the comments if you found anything I mentioned today interesting or surprising. Did any of my reactions sound like things that you've thought or felt before? Let me know down in the comments, or you can always email me at everydayconsent@gmail.com. If you like this video, press that like button, and if you'd like to see more from me, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks everyone, happy consenting, and I'll see you next week.
Like once the actual party started, like cuddling party part of it started, I sort of walked towards the edge and just sort of sat down and observed. And it was interesting because I noticed that I was feeling like, because I had decided to do that, and like thankfully like it had been like reinforced that that was okay, and so I was like okay with that decision, and like I was just like cool, like this is what I'm gonna do and it's gonna be okay. And so I was happy with that, but like the main thing that I was fighting was just like the discomfort of like not participating, not in a like peer pressure way, but in a like thing that I'm working on way, and that like I mentioned before, like I want to be like this person who's involved and who's like supportive of it and who's like you know, like social and like totally cool with everything, and so like just sitting there and not participating or not like I mean like I talk to people or whatever, but like intentionally like saying no to everything and like not being involved was really hard. It was like, and it was interesting, it was nice to like practice that, to sort of like have that moment, to work on that skill of just sort of letting myself do that, of letting myself like be okay with that. But anyway, so that was really interesting. That was my cuddle party experience.